Welcome to the new series for this year called Soulmates. And it's nice to see some new faces, familiar faces, so welcome. I'd like to ask you to please turn to text 1A on page 2. On September 11th, 2001, the world changed. As the Twin Towers turned into a hellish inferno, those trapped on the upper floors and those aboard the pirated aircraft desperately reached for their cell phones to get one last message out. Perhaps this was the very first time in recorded history that a group of people, knowing that they were breathing their last, were able to communicate with those who were most precious to them. What do you imagine their final words will be? What would be their last will and testament?
Wow. I read ahead.
What do you think? That's okay. You're allowed. It's actually good. I'm not planning to actually read text 1B inside, so if you read ahead, that's fine, although it takes out the suspense a little bit.
I know.
But thoughts, ladies, what do you think?
Wow.
I love you.
Yeah, you're right. No shock factor there, right? Because no one should ever be in this position, God forbid, but when it comes down to the crunch sometimes and somebody's in a position where they might lose what's most important to them, it gives a jolt as to what the priorities are. And one of the most important things in people's lives are their relationships. Any relationship. I mean, this class is primarily about marriage, but there's definitely lessons we can apply to any relationship, whether it's family, work, friendships. And it's sort of, as in this case, as we read here, it jolts a person to examine their priorities, and they're not going to give a last-minute message, to do this banking or, this an errand or the dry cleaning or whatever, right? When it boils down to it, what's most important? I love you. It's about the relationship.
I heard a story in Israel. Some man was in this place, and he called to rabbi just do get for his wife, because he knows he will die.
He didn't want her to never know what happened to him, so she would suffer the rest of her life.
In Jewish law, if somebody not see him die.
And then she's stuck. That's right, because she never knows. So, in essence, he was doing the biggest favor he could for the one that he loved the most. That's right, beautiful.
What is that? How would that be again, according to Jewish law?
According to Jewish law, if a wife does not know what happened to her husband, if he disappeared, and it could be suspected that he's no longer alive, but she doesn't know for sure, she, according to law, is still considered married unless there's clear evidence that he's no longer alive. Wow. So he was, in fact, doing her the biggest favor by doing that so that she's not stuck the rest of her life. Wow. Not here, not there,
Oh, my.
So,
about love.
Yeah, exactly. So talking about love, talking about relationships. In this course, we are going to examine what Judaism has to say on love, on relationships, and on marriage. Now, what is unique about this course? I mean, after all, there are so many books written on this topic, how to enhance your marriage, tips for your marriage. There's a huge industry of marriage counseling and therapy, and just Google and go on YouTube and you'll find thousands probably of videos and speeches and plenty of information on this topic. So what's unique about this course? Any of you have an iPad or iPod or any kind of gadget? Yeah. So imagine when you purchase this gadget, you can go to the engineer at Apple who designed it and ask all your questions and get all the tips and all the instructions for how to really get the most out of your iPod or iPad or whatever this gadget may be. Or what you can do is you can Google and end up on answers.com or what are the other ones, ehow.com, and you'll have thousands of people giving their opinions and their experience. There's something to say for that, and their experience of what worked for them and what they figured out and what they didn't manage to find out, and they're also hoping to learn, right? And you can benefit from all these people's experience with the same item. What would probably give you more accurate, and in terms of quality, but also in terms of quantity, more information about your purchase? The engineer who designed it, the manufacturer, or random people who have experience with the same item?
The first one.
Probably the one who made it, right? No one knows the item better than the one who made it. So whoever designed your iPad really knows the ins and outs of it and can tell you anything you want to know, all the different tips and tricks and important information about it. When it comes to marriage, the best information, the best knowledge, the best tips we can get for a successful relationship is from our manufacturer. Who is the manufacturer of men and women? It's Hashem, it's God. He made man, he made woman. He knows all our shtick, as we say. He knows what a woman needs, he knows what a man needs, he knows what a woman wants, he knows what a man wants, and he knows how to merge the two together to achieve the utmost success in that partnership. And this knowledge, our manufacturer put into the Torah. If we really want to know how we work and how our spouse works or our future spouse works, we want to get the inside information, the insider tips. Let's hear it from our manufacturer, who really knows us best. That information is all in the Torah. And that is the goal of this course, of this series, to tap into that information and study the Torah perspective, Judaism's perspective on how to enhance, how to guide our relationships, our marriage. Start with a question. Why do people get married?
Because it's the right person to share. Like, it's just another step, part of the same commitment. But I don't know, in my case, it was just meant to be. I guess it was something else.
Okay. What made you feel that marriage was necessary? I don't want to get personal, not you necessarily, but if a person meets someone who they feel is right for them, so let them enjoy a relationship. Why marriage? Why that technical step that legally they are now married?
I mean, it's legally, but then there are a lot of things that come after marriage, like build your own family, like, I don't know, do things the right way, and of
Okay.
course have
I hear you.
a wedding, a Jewish wedding, you know, like, I don't know.
Okay. So why would a Jewish wedding make a difference? We're going to explore that. It's a good point. We're going to explore that. Good. Any other thoughts? Any other ideas?
Well, it creates security, and it also brings two families very formally together in sort of a binding relationship. And that binding relationship matters in times of trouble. And also in times of joy. It's like a positive obligation. Not always positive, but, and that obligation does force human beings to hopefully do the right thing. So I think marriage can be very helpful in building communities that are strong and obligated to help each other, you know. That extra little push sometimes.
Okay, so the extra little push, I guess, in terms of obligating a couple to give to each other in commitments.
And their families, maybe.
Support, family support.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over just living together. I think it can create more knitting together. And also, you know, I know common law has a lot of legal purposes, but in the Jewish tradition, also if you're at a wedding and you're there, you're part of the support group to keep the family together, and so you get all the benefits of that. So, okay, so you're saying marriage is not just about the couple per se, but it puts their marriage into a context of community. I think so.
Okay, and you're saying if a couple eventually wants to build a family, so marriage is important
For the couple.
for the couple.
First.
Okay, those are all excellent thoughts. Let's take a look, page 4. You have a learning exercise? Page 4. So here we have a bunch of options that you can choose what resonates with you. What do you think are the primary reasons that people get married? So you ladies have brought up some excellent points, which you'll see here as well. Are there any other points listed here that you agree with? Is there anything in particular you do not agree with?
Their children.
Children, okay, as Monica said. Yep.
I think it's like in Torah we have this.
Yes.
I do think shared purpose
Yeah, me
is a
too,
big
yeah.
one.
Shared purpose, okay.
It's like you just sort of have a life that you decide that you want to create together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can relate to that one.
Yeah. That definitely resonates.
Tax benefits?
I think you get those with common law. though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, what you see here basically are a list of, what it boils down to are benefits of marriage. Some more superficial, like tax benefits, and some on a deeper level, as in shared purpose, as in building a family together.
As love.
And love, yes, definitely. These are all benefits to marriage. But are these benefits accessible without the technicality, so to speak? I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here, okay? I'm not necessarily talking about it in our Jewish way of looking at things. We're going to get to that soon. But are these benefits accessible in just a long-term relationship without marriage?
I guess I'm thinking of a situation in my family, and I won't go into any great detail, but the couple has separated now. And the mother-in-law responded with saying, "This feels like a death." So when the couple's married, it's not only blessing the couple and the children, the nuclear family, but it has this significance to the in-laws and the extended family. For someone to describe a separation as a death, it just gives me a sense
Right.
of how profound that is, or how significant.
Well, that's what Natalie, right? Natalie was saying, that a marriage will affect a wider circle of people. Do you think that in itself, though, is a reason for a couple to decide to get married? I mean, it's about the couple, after all, at the end of the day, and it's a huge step. So is the impact of their marriage on the rest of their family and friends enough of a reason for them to get married, if that's the only benefit to it?
No, I think it's just a benefit.
No, I wouldn't be an only one, but it's obviously significant.
Yes, definitely.
I think emotional security is a big one too. Like for sure, there's a difference. You know what I mean? Like knowing. I don't know. It's like when my husband and I, before we were married, we would get into have arguments. I definitely always had a different response back then than I do now, where it's like there was always like a little thing in the back of my mind, like that that I could just like be independent and leave, not be in this relationship and not have to deal with all this, you know what I mean? And if I was upset, that I don't have anymore, and there's like a security in not having that. Knowing that no matter what, okay, like we're just gonna work through it.
Okay, so there is a certain sense of security because you legalized it. But other than that, I mean, basically then it's just an insurance policy. Are there other benefits that marriage itself will bring to your relationship? A lot of you mentioned building a family. Does that also require marriage?
No,
I mean, you see plenty of kids today who grow up not necessarily in the traditional family setting, and they're great. So why do people get married? Especially when you consider the statistics. There's a statistic from 2008. This is the last time in Canada that this survey, I guess, was done. 40% divorce rate in Canada. Wow. And yeah, so people do want to get married, but it's not so simple. A lot of people also getting divorced, and of course, like I mentioned before, the whole industry of marriage therapy and counseling, and it shows that marriage is not so easy. There's issues. So why do people bother if any ways they can get the benefits outside of marriage? So what we are going to explore in today's class is what Judaism has to say about marriage, what marriage essentially is according to Judaism. And once we define marriage in that way, not only will we have a theoretical idea of what the concept of marriage is supposed to be, but that knowledge will also affect the way we relate to our spouse or our future spouse. In other words, getting to the root of what marriage is not only going to tell us why to be married, but also how to be married. And this is a concept, the how to be married is a concept that we will begin to develop today, and of course will continue to develop throughout the series of classes. So let's begin. What actually makes a couple married according to Jewish law? It seems like, I think most of you have been at Jewish weddings, right? It sounds like. So halachically, according to Jewish law, what makes a couple married?
Signing of the ketubah.
Okay, we have the ketubah. Good.
Don't you know
The
this?
ring, I know.
The ring. Forgot already.
I know that there's two parts of the ceremony.
Very good.
The
Very good.
No?
The wine, which is part of the
Drinking the
Sheva
wine,
Brachot,
yeah.
the blessings under the chuppah. Very good. Breaking of the glass, part of the ceremony as well. That's not what that creates legality of the Jewish marriage, but it is part of the ceremony, has its own significance.
It's not what happens right
Oh,
after
when
the
you're-
marriage, privately?
Yes, which is symbolized in the marriage ceremony, as we will see soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it the witnessing of the two committing to each other?
So in order for the legal process to take place, witnesses are necessary, like anything in law.
Yeah.
When you're down the talit, or I don't know.
When, sorry?
Well, I don't know in Mexico it's like that, but I guess it's like that everywhere. But when you're the bride and the groom are down the talit. No?
The chuppah.
Yes. but
You
then
use a talit, right?
there's a chuppah and also the talit.
Also a talit.
Like
Okay.
Wrap yourself in a talit.
That is a tradition I've seen.
Like together.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
a
everywhere.
Sephardi tradition.
That's a Sephardi
We did that
tradition,
too, yeah.
and it might be similar to what the chuppah symbolizes as well, which we'll discuss briefly. I'm not sure though, it's very interesting. I'm going to see if I can find out about that a little bit more. Yes, so in other words, what basically creates the marriage according to Jewish law takes place under the chuppah, and you all mentioned very important things. The ring, we have the ketubah, which is of course witnessed, we have the blessings. But these are actually subdivided into two different stages. A Jewish marriage is completed in two stages. So the first stage is called kiddushin, and that is through the ring. When the groom places the ring on the bride's finger and the bride accepts it, that is the first step in the process of a Jewish marriage, which is called kiddushin. Then comes the second stage, which is called nisu'in, and that is through the ketubah, the marriage contract.
The ring, not the contract.
The ring was first, the first stage. Second stage is through the contract, where we read what the husband is obligated to do for his wife in the marriage, and the blessings under the chuppah. Now, today, both these steps are done together, one after the other under the chuppah. It used to be in ancient times that the first stage was done as its own ceremony with as much as a year in between the two stages. The kiddushin, the ring, was done first with its own celebration, and then months later, or even years later, depending on the circumstances, the finalization was done, the second stage, the nisu'in, which is through the contract, and the brachot and the chuppah. The ring was not done under a chuppah. That stage itself does not need to be under the chuppah. It's the second stage which really requires the chuppah. So what are these two stages about exactly? What's taking place? Let's take a look at text 3. Page 5. Anybody want to read?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
The Jewish wedding ceremony actually consists of two parts. First, there is betrothal, or irusin, and then there's marriage, or nisuin. These two ceremonies were originally held as much as a year apart, but it later became the custom to hold them together. Although Irusine is usually translated as betrothal, there is actually no English equivalent for the word. Irusine is like an engagement in that it does not permit the couple to live together or to share marital intimacy. On the other hand, as soon as Irusine is completed, the woman has the full status of a married woman, and the man also has the status of a married man. If the couple wish to break the union after Irusine, a Jewish bill of divorce, or a get, is required. The rite of Irusine is completed when the groom places the ring on the bride's finger. It can be accomplished by giving her anything of value and declaring her to be his bride and her accepting it. The rite is also known as Kiddushin, which means sanctification. Individually, Irusine has the power to give the bride the status of a married woman and the groom the status of a married man. Nevertheless, as a pair, they do not have the status of a married couple. At this time, they are forbidden to each other physically, like any other unmarried couple.
Mm-hmm.
So the ring is not compulsory, it's just something that...
It is compulsory. That's the interesting thing here.
Oh, good.
Each stage is necessary, and each stage is accomplishing something.
Doesn't he say here, this is when the groom places the ring, is can be accomplished by giving her anything of value?
Oh, okay, yes. The ring per se, it could be something else, but there has to be that act of the husband giving something of value to the wife. That shows the commitment. Once the husband, and it's most commonly the ring, so I'll just, for purpose of clarification, I'll just say ring. When the groom gives the bride the ring, what he's demonstrating is the commitment, that they are now bound to each other to the exclusion of anyone else. That he is now considered, according to law, a husband, and she, according to law, is now considered a wife. And they are not allowed to be with anybody else. Yet at the same time, they also can't be with each other. So they're bound to each other. They're in a relationship now, once the ring was given, but they can't live together yet. When do they actually begin married life together? It's through the second stage of Nisuin, which takes place under the chuppah. The chuppah symbolizes their home that they're going to build together. And once those steps take place under the chuppah, the steps of the ksuba, the steps of the sheva brachot, the wine, then they can begin living their life together and sharing physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, the daily life that makes up marriage as we know it. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, what I'd like to do is go back to the Kiddushin stage for a moment, the first stage. In Aramaic, it's also known as Erusin, as you see here in the text. The stage of the commitment, that they are committed to each other to the exclusion of anyone else. It's very interesting that they're considered married for all intents and purposes to the extent, as we read, as Natalie read for us, that if they want to separate and break this commitment, they need a Jewish divorce, they need a get. So it's serious commitment we're talking about. They're, for all intents and purposes, they're married. Yet, they can't enjoy any of the benefits of married life. They can't live together. They can't share a life together. They can't be intimate together on any level. So what exactly about the Kiddushin stage makes them married? What gives them the title of husband and wife? What makes them so committed to each other to the exclusion of anyone else that they need a divorce if they're not even sharing a life together? So is there something to a marriage besides sharing a life together? Besides building a home together? Perhaps, but do they need that strong commitment to develop a friendship? Do they need to be called husband and wife?
That's true.
I mean, maybe we can compare to today's engagement period. That would be perhaps a time to develop a friendship more. But here we're not talking about an engagement as we know. We're talking about the halachic engagements called Erusin or Kiddushin, where they need a get if they break it, which engagements today don't need. Right?
So if the groom is giving a commitment, even for example a ring or anything, if the groom is making a commitment, in other words, a public commitment.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
not just a commitment between the two of them, it's a public one.
It's a public one. It's a legal one according to Jewish law.
Now, if it's God, they have to get a get to
Right. But what exactly is marriage? Yes, technically it's called marriage. They're legally married. But I'm saying on a practical level, how are they married exactly? They can't be together, they can't live together, they're not building a home together. So is there something about marriage besides that? Perhaps this is the elusive something about marriage.
But it's not something
Why people get married. I don't know. Hold that thought. Perhaps. Perhaps.
It's not something spiritual at the beginning, or like this connection, first connection, that it's not about like living in the same place or the intimacy part. It's just like we are two, but I don't know. You make like
I love what you just said, Monica, and you're definitely touching on the point here that we're going to develop. Beautiful. So you're saying that there's something spiritual about a marriage, and perhaps that's what's being expressed before they physically share their life together. Beautiful. Okay, we're going to develop that further. What I'd like to do first, however, is go way back in our history to the creation of the very first couple. Who is the very first couple? Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, exactly.
Adán y Eva in Spanish.
Again? Say it again.
Adán y Eva.
Ada y Eva.
Adán.
Adan y Eva. Okay, now we have in Spanish too. Thank you.
English.
In English?
Aiden? No.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so text number 5, page 7. Here we have the creation of the world's first human being, or perhaps beings, as we will try to find out. And God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Okay, ladies, what do you have to say on that? Anything awkward about the phrasing here?
His image.
In the image of God,
Okay, so who was created in the image of God?
man and woman. Or,
Man and woman, or man? I'm a little bit confused.
oh, yes, okay. Well,
Is anyone else confused? I'm a little bit confused by this phrase here.
Okay, God created man in God's image,
Well, it's not till the third time that he actually mentions female.
and in his image, God.
That's true. So who's being created here, do you think?
Man.
Man.
It feels like it's man, and then it's almost like an afterthought that man is male and female.
Okay, so it's
Like-
man being created. Is the female also being created at this point?
Yeah, but it feels like
But the woman is of him, so.
Okay, I'm not going to read this inside. Just to yourselves, take a quick look in text 6. Just to get an idea what's going on over there. What's happening over there in text 6? This is from later in Genesis. Okay, so text 5 is from the first chapter. And this is from the second chapter. So they're not consecutive phrases. Okay, what's happening here in text 6? Someone's been created. Who?
the female.
The female. Okay, so the female's not being created till chapter 2 of Genesis, as we see here in text 6. So what's happening in text 5, a whole chapter earlier? It's the man being created. It can't be the female being created because she's not created till later.
Right.
Yet, it's hard to understand the phrasing at
this
this
is
in this
not
text.
really
Male, he created.
Because then within man, it's acknowledged that female, like the male and female is within the man.
Beautiful.
Which-
But you ladies are,
So much like
Great.
Buddhism. Yay.
you got it. You got it. Let's look at text 7. Anybody would like to read that? You don't have to read the Hebrew if you're not comfortable, or if you prefer the Hebrew, you're welcome to read that too. We're putting you on the spot. Go
Rabbi
ahead.
Shmuel Bar Nachman said, when God created the first human, he created him with two faces. Then he split them and created two backs, a separate back for each.
Exactly as Natalie said. So there you
So
go.
happy. Who said that our tradition is patriarchal? This is good.
Of course. So in the first the first text describing the creation of man, it is man being created. God created him, right? He created man in his image. He created him. Yet, together with that, we also have the aspect of male and female. He created them because man was originally created as one entity with both male and female characteristics, as Ariella just read for us. One person with two faces, the male and the female. What happened later, as we see in text 6, a whole chapter later, God realized that Adam is alone. He needs a partner. So he split this one entity of male, one single male-female entity, into two. So now there is a man and there is a woman. Two separate beings. Okay? And then they came together in marriage, in their relationship, and they came as one again, and had children, etc. Okay? Now, everything that takes place in our physical reality, so things that we could see, tap into with our five senses, things that we could relate to that are tangible, everything that happens physically is a reflection of a simultaneous spiritual reality. So when we talk about Adam and Eve's physical creation, how they were created originally as one male-female entity, and then split, and then reunited through marriage, this mirrors a spiritual process that takes place on a soul level and is reenacted through every Jewish marriage. Text number 8. When God sends forth souls into the world, each includes a male and a female joined together. When they descend to the world, they are separated from each other. This is based on Kabbalah. As you can see, it's sourced from the Zohar. Now, to continue the text, when their time to be married arrives, God, who knows these souls, joins them as they were before they descended to this world. When they are joined together, they become one body and one soul. So just as Adam and Eve were originally created as one physical entity, the souls of every single Jewish couple are created as one spiritual entity, one soul. Then the soul's divided into male-female. The female soul goes into the female body, and then the other part of the soul, the male soul, goes into the male body, to two separate people, and then they find each other many years later, and they reunite, and those souls become one again through the marriage. So, in essence, a couple is really one at its most essential being on the soul level. They are one entity. They return to become one entity. So perhaps instead of using the common term of soulmates, we should say soul parts. Because the souls of a couple, of the husband and of the wife, they're not just compatible friends, share the same goals, have the same interest. They're not just mates, but they are parts of the very same whole. And when they come together again, they recreate that whole. And this reality that a couple is one on the soul level, this indicates something very deep about a marriage. Something that goes way beyond the benefits of a marriage, way beyond what a couple is going to give to each other, what they're going to give to their family, what they're going to give to their community, way beyond the give and take and the daily life of a marriage. There is something that bonds the couple, independent of what the couple will do, independent of their behavior. No matter what they do, no matter what form their daily life takes, they are one at their core. They are essentially bonded. And this is what the stage of Kiddushin teaches us. That, yes, there is something to marriage aside from the daily life together, aside from the physical intimacy, aside from the emotional intimacy. There is something so integral, so fundamental, essential to a marriage that is greater than any external benefits a marriage will bring. Now, the trick is to actualize this subconscious soul level oneness and have it impact the daily life, the actual physical marriage of a couple. And that's why we have the second stage of Nisuin. So let's take a look at text 12a. 12a. Any volunteers? Thank you, Natalia.
Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh.
They should become one flesh. So it seems to be a goal of marriage that the Torah is telling us. This is also from Genesis. After the creation of Eve, when Adam now has a partner, the goal is for the couple to become one flesh. What does that mean? So on a simple level, and this is actually what the famous commentator of Rashi mentions, that becoming one flesh is referring to the conception and the birth of a child, the starting of a family. A child is a physical representation, of both the husband and the wife. But there's another way to look at it on a deeper level as well. Both are right. We spoke in previous classes, for those of you who were here, that each of us has two souls. We have our godly soul, which desires us to act in a godly way, desires us to express. That soul wants to be expressed through us, through doing what God wants of us, through getting closer to God and emulating God, has spiritual drives. And then we have what's called in Hasidic philosophy the animal soul, which essentially it's our human soul. It's our mortal soul, it's our human soul. And that soul is expressed through our physical needs. That soul wants us to eat, to drink, to satiate ourselves, to gratify ourselves. That could be in a good way, the essentials we need to live. It could also be carried a little bit too far in the wrong direction in terms of self-gratification and our ego and doing everything in a self-centered way. But that's the human soul. It wants to feel good. It wants to be right. It wants to be comfortable, etc., as opposed to the godly soul, which wants only what God wants and wants the body to express that. Now, we already mentioned that a couple, no matter what they do, is one on the soul level in terms of the godly souls. The godly souls, the two pieces came back together, the two parts came together, and they had the spiritual fusion on the level of the godly soul. But what that can translate into is a certain commitment between the couple, a certain devotion that the couple takes on each other's physical needs as well. And I don't just mean the basics of, doing the laundry and making sure everyone has something to eat and, something to wear and doesn't make sure all the checks are paid so that the water's not cut off and you have electricity and heat. That too. But physical needs encompasses much more than that. It's also the emotional needs of each spouse. Being a support for each other, being each other's cheering squad and biggest fan, and being interested in what interests the other and what the other's passion is, and taking part in what the other spouse enjoys and likes to do, and sharing your details of the day together. providing security for each other on an emotional level as well as on a physical level. That's all included in caring for each other's physical needs. And when a couple takes on the other's needs, when one spouse takes on the other's needs as if it was his or her own, what's happening is that the human souls are merging too. The human souls and by extension, all our physical needs that are expressing what that human soul needs, they're merging as one. It's not me and you. It's us. It's our needs. They become blended. So the Nisuin stage, which is a couple living together, sharing together, being intimate together, that could express and actualize the subconscious oneness, the spiritual fusion that they already are experiencing by taking that oneness and merging not having only their godly souls merged, but allowing their human souls to be merged as well, bringing that oneness into their daily lives so their needs become one, so their needs blend. So in other words, it's not enough really to just be fused on a soul level, on a godly level. That happens anyways. You know, a couple could say, well, that's great, we're one already, well, let's leave it at that. You know, our marriage is already has a good start. It's important to work on the marriage, to develop a marriage so that that essential oneness also impacts a couple's daily life. And that's where the Nisuin comes in. So really, the two stages lead to each other. Because on one hand, we see the Nisuin aspect of a marriage, the daily life aspect, where they're now living together, actualizing the Kiddushin aspect of marriage, which is their essential oneness independent of any behavior. On the other hand, it's the Kiddushin aspect of marriage, this essential oneness, that inspires the trickle down of this oneness into daily life, the Nisuin aspect of marriage. How? What does that mean exactly? So let's call them Kiddushin moments. What's a Kiddushin moment? Well, a Kiddushin moment basically means, and this is a newly coined term, it's not an official term of any sort, but it really articulates well what we're trying to bring across here, is to take a moment on a regular basis, whether it's daily in a certain time each day before you go to sleep or in the shower or whenever, just to reflect on this essential reality that makes such a difference to your marriage, the fact that you and your spouse, or you and your future spouse, are one at your core, that you share a soul. That no matter what, you have that bond. Take a moment to reflect on that. Now, marriages are full of issues, okay? So let's imagine a scenario where a couple's having a disagreement, arguing over something. And I'll give you a minute to just try and visualize something. You don't need to share it with us if you don't want to. A typical argument that comes up. And your reaction in that case. Now, imagine that not long before this issue came up, this argument, you had a Kiddushin moment. You had that reflection of what's real in your marriage, of what the foundation of your marriage is. Would that change your response?
Yeah, for sure.
We're laughing, right? Because we know how true this is.
Yes.
If the foundation of a marriage is the give and take, is the benefits, then what could easily happen are priorities could start to become skewed. The marriage becomes all about who's right, I'm right, he's right, I did this, so I'm entitled to that. This is not fair. I don't deserve to be treated that way. the marriage becomes all about that, because that is the foundation of the marriage. That's what the marriage is based on, what we are going to give and take between each other. But when the marriage is based on something so much bigger than the two, than the couple, when the marriage is based on something so essential, so unconditional, something that no matter what the couple does, they're never going to change this fact, the fact that on a soul level they are one, they share one soul, then that puts every issue that comes up in marriage into a certain context. It puts it into against a backdrop, in a wider context. That our marriage is based on something much, much bigger than my ego or my spouse's ego. And therefore, when it comes to these issues, it's not really about who's the winner, who's the loser. It's really either we're both winners or we're both losers. Because look at the bigger picture. You are one. That's it. That's the fact. You're meant to be together. You're meant to be married because you share one soul. So if I am so determined to be right now, that might feel good for now, but how's that going to impact my marriage in the bigger picture? It gives a different perspective to the marriage, a much broader, deeper, stronger perspective to what's really important in the marriage and really important between the two of you. Also, when a marriage is based on something so immutable, a principle that can never be changed or moved, then no matter what happens to the marriage itself, things change, right? Personalities change, circumstances change, behaviors change, things fluctuate. It's normal, it's life. Nothing ever stays the same. And we see this a lot, that a couple will get married for specific reasons, and then life takes over. It could be something as, they have kids, or job gets stressful, or the honeymoon is over and now we're back to real life. And suddenly one spouse may see the other spouse in a different light, and what prompted the relationship may not exist anymore. Things have changed. And what happens, a lot of times sadly, is a couple could, what they call fall out of love. Because the relationship is based on things that fluctuate. It's conditional. It's based on benefits that life changes all the time. But when the relationship is based on something immutable, as we said, it's based on that soul connection that is independent. It cannot be affected by what changes in the marriage, by personality changes, behavior changes, circumstance changes. Then no matter what happens, the couple is less likely to fall out of love, so to speak, and will be able to ride the different ups and downs that are in a typical marriage much more easily. In other words, the Kiddushin aspect of a marriage, the soul connection, gives depth and stability to that Nisuin aspect of marriage, to the give and take, to the benefits, to the shared life, which is also important. We're not negating that, but the point is, in what context are we finding it? And when it's in the context, when it's preceded by an awareness of the reality that we're one, it changes the picture even when it comes to the benefits and when it comes to the give and take. The Kiddushin is the foundation, and the Nisuin will actualize it. So going back to our original question, why get married? So Monica, you probably see now how you were right on target there by saying that marriage cannot be only about the give and take and the benefits. There must be something spiritual there as well. And the Kiddushin stage of a Jewish marriage shows us exactly that yes, there is something there beyond the obvious. There's something below that's stabilizing the marriage, that's actually the foundation for creating a healthy and loving relationship. A Jewish marriage creates that soul fusion of a couple. And a relationship based on that reality, a reality of a soul fusion, can take that oneness into every aspect of that relationship. We'll take that oneness into the daily life. We'll take that oneness into the physical intimacy, into the emotional intimacy, into the give and take, which will create a healthy, loving relationship and also a strong and enduring relationship that could easily weather whatever life throws at the marriage. Any questions, ladies, or anything to add?
So then, if you, after all that we said, maybe something simple, when you feel that yes, this is meant to be, it's because there's something beyond, or that we really know in a very, very deep level that yes, this person is meant for me because I feel it that way, and the other person feel it that way, or no, or that will be something crazy.
Sometimes it happens. I don't think it's always going to happen for everybody that they'll have this intuition that this is my soulmate. It doesn't always happen like that. And being soulmates, I don't think is dependent on that. You know, the very fact that a Jewish couple gets married proves that they're soulmates. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten married, right? But of course, there also has to be the rational thinking involved. In other words, you know, it's not that a Jewish guy meets a Jewish girl and say, oh, we're both Jewish, we probably share a soul root, so let's get married. There also has to be the more external level. They have to like each other, they have to have common interests, they have to feel comfortable with each other, whatever it is. But once they come to that decision that they feel they're compatible and they get married, you know, there's something beyond just what logically caused them to get married. There's something way beyond that, that even if that logical, even if that way of thinking changes over time, they're still meant to be together.
In other words, it has to be beyond the attraction, or what they call chemistry.
Yes, that's a very good point. That's a little bit of a different angle of looking at it, that falling in love doesn't necessarily mean that you can build a solid relationship together. Because falling in love could also, I mean, the couple could also fall out of love. There definitely has to be a feeling. There has to be an attraction, because otherwise it's still, we're humans after all, and it won't work without some sort of attraction. But people who wait for the stars and the falling in love and everything, that may never happen, and that's okay. Because that's not what a solid relationship's really all about. If there's that connection and good feelings between each other, and respect and shared values, that is enough. That could be enough to, right, to exactly. And the love that people always talk about, a true love, as we mentioned in this class, a true love comes from the knowledge that you're one on the soul level, and which means, in a practical sense, how do we develop true love? It's through giving to each other unconditionally. It's through taking on each other's needs so you can actualize your oneness and you actually become one flesh in a physical sense. That's what love really is. In fact, what's the Hebrew word for love? Anybody know? Ahava. So embedded in that word, we have the a hey and a vet, hav. And in Aramaic, you know what that means? It means to give. Because that's really how you develop true love. Falling in love at the beginning, it's not true love, it's chemistry. It's emotions, it's excitement. Not to knock it, it's also good, but it's not enough to base a solid relationship on. The true love comes later. It comes from recognizing that you are so connected, recognizing this is your soulmate, this is the one for you, and developing that in every single aspect of your life, and building a home together and caring for each other.
Basically,
that's where it comes in.
It's the symbol of the fact that the groom gives something. He's investing, so the woman has to invest. So each, as a couple, invest in each other in all aspects. Physical,
right. Well, the ring, the ring symbolizes that, because that begins that investment. And there's also that investment from the wife too. It may be the man giving the ring, but the woman has to accept it. It's not forced on her.
She's investing herself.
Right. So they each make it. It's a two-way commitment.
Exactly.
Of course. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about.
That's true.
Right. Welcome to the new series for this year called Soulmates. And it's nice to see some new faces, familiar faces, so welcome. I'd like to ask you to please turn to text 1A on page 2. On September 11th, 2001, the world changed. As the Twin Towers turned into a hellish inferno, those trapped on the upper floors and those aboard the pirated aircraft desperately reached for their cell phones to get one last message out. Perhaps this was the very first time in recorded history that a group of people, knowing that they were breathing their last, were able to communicate with those who were most precious to them. What do you imagine their final words will be? What would be their last will and testament?
Wow. I read ahead.
What do you think? That's okay. You're allowed. It's actually good. I'm not planning to actually read text 1B inside, so if you read ahead, that's fine, although it takes out the suspense a little bit.
I know.
But thoughts, ladies, what do you think?
Wow.
I love you.
Yeah, you're right. No shock factor there, right? Because gadget may be. Or what you can do is you can Google and end up on answers.com or what are the other ones? ehow.com, and you'll have thousands of people giving their opinions and their experience, or something to say for that, and their experience of what worked for them and what they figured out and what they didn't manage to find out, and they're also hoping to learn, right? And you can benefit from all these people's experience with the same item. What would probably give you more accurate, and in terms of quality, but also in terms of quantity, more information about your purchase? The engineer who designed it, the manufacturer, or random people who have experience with the same item?
The first one.
Probably the one who made it, right? No one knows the item better than the one who made it. So whoever designed your iPad really knows the ins and outs of it and can tell you anything you want to know, all the different tips and tricks and important information about it. When it comes to marriage, the best information, the best knowledge, the best tips we can get for a successful relationship is from our manufacturer. Who is the manufacturer of men and women? It's Hashem, it's God. He made man, he made woman. He knows all our shtick, as we say. He knows what a woman needs, he knows what a man does. No one should ever be in this position, God forbid, but when it comes down to the crunch sometimes and somebody's in a position where they might lose what's most important to them, it gives a jolt as to what the priorities are. And one of the most important things in people's lives are their relationships. Any relationship. I mean, this class is primarily about marriage, but there's definitely lessons we can apply to any relationship, whether it's family, work, friendships. And it's sort of, as in this case, as we read here, it jolts a person to examine their priorities, and they're not going to give a last-minute message, to do this banking or, this an errand or the dry cleaning or whatever, right? When it boils down to it, what's most important? I love you. It's about the relationship.
I heard a story in Israel. Some man was in this place, and he called to rabbi just do get for his wife because he knows he will die.
He didn't want her to never know what happened to him, so she would suffer the rest of her life.
In Jewish law, if somebody not see him die.
And then she's stuck. That's right, because she never knows. So, in essence, he was doing the biggest favor he could for the one that he loved the most. That's right, beautiful.
What's that? Oh, how would that be again, according to Jewish law?
According to Jewish law, if he knows what a woman wants, he knows what a man wants, and he knows how to merge the two together to achieve the utmost success in that partnership. And this knowledge our manufacturer put into the Torah. If we really want to know how we work and how our spouse works or our future spouse works, we want to get the inside information, the insider tips. Let's hear it from our manufacturer who really knows us best. That information is all in the Torah. And that is the goal of this course, of this series, to tap into that information and study the Torah perspective, Judaism's perspective on how to enhance, how to guide our relationships, our marriage. Start with a question. Why do people get married?
Because it's the right person to share. Like, it's just another step, part of the same commitment. But I don't know. In my case, it was just meant to be. I guess it was something else.
Okay. What made you feel that marriage was necessary? I don't want to get personal, not you necessarily, but if a person meets someone who they feel is right for them, so let them enjoy a relationship. Why marriage? Why that technical step that legally they are now married?
I mean, it's legally, but then there are a lot of things that come up.
A wife does not know what happened to her husband if he disappeared. And it could be suspected that he's no longer alive, but she doesn't know for sure. She, according to law, is still considered married unless there's clear evidence that he's no longer alive. Wow. So he was, in fact, doing her the biggest favor by doing that so that she's not stuck the rest of her life. Wow. Not here, not there, you know?
Oh, my.
So,
about love.
Yeah, exactly. So talking about love, talking about relationships. In this course, we are going to examine what Judaism has to say on love, on relationships, and on marriage. Now, what is unique about this course? I mean, after all, there are so many books written on this topic, how to enhance your marriage, tips for your marriage. There's a huge industry of marriage counseling and therapy, and you know, just Google and go on YouTube and you'll find thousands probably of videos and speeches and plenty of information on this topic. So what's unique about this course? Any of you have an iPad or iPod or any kind of gadget? Yeah. So imagine when you purchase this gadget, you can go to the engineer at Apple who designed it and ask all your questions and get all the tips and all the instructions for how to really get the most out of your iPod or iPad or whatever